And here I am again. Here I am again. Gonna make a video today about an email that I got. I've been wanting to make this video anyway, so I appreciate April for pushing this video a little bit sooner than I wanted to make it. I guess I don't really have a schedule, but it's a video that I've been putting off for quite some time. But before I get started, one of the things that I want to ask you, and I'm genuinely curious every single time that I make these videos now, I want to know what exciting shit you did this week, yesterday, a few hours ago, something super duper exciting. Put in the comments. Want to know about that shit. Um, Later on, I'm going to ask you a different question, so stay for that or skip to the other one, and I'll ask you that question. And I'm going to ask this question. It's going to be the same almost every single time, but I am going to be curious about something exciting that happened to you um, earlier today, yesterday, over the weekend, last month, something relatively soon. Put that in the comments. I'm just nosy. Doesn't have to be gun related. But anyways, April sent an email, and I'm going to show you what this email says. Let me find it. I took a screenshot and I took um, the email address off. I'm going to leave the name up there. Fuck it. But I am going to take the email address off, unless this human wants me to give her email address so that she can have a conversation. But I figure if I make the video and I kind of send my response to her, the video is my response to that email. Let me make sure I actually took everything off. Sometimes I hurry up and I think I took everything off and then I don't. Cool. I just want to make sure her info's not, aside from her name, is not up there. But here we go. If you can't see it, zoom in, I guess. But here we are. This is from April Blundell. Hopefully, I'm saying it correctly. Blundo or Blundell? I think it's Blundell. Hello, I am a Marine Corps veteran, and I have someone here at my work who went through your concealed carry training and said the instructor taught him and the other 60 students to carry in condition one, round in chamber, safety off. I am trying to verify if this is true or not. So before I answer your question, I do want to talk about context. And context is something that gets lost a lot. This is a Marine Corps veteran that was taught on firearms that have safeties on them. In an environment, let's be honest, and you guys can argue about this in the comments. But if you are in the military, especially if you don't go to combat, you know everything's that's going to happen. Everything's choreographed. Everything is told to you. Everything is, and when I say choreograph, I don't mean that in a negative way, right? Because even in combat, you have humans who are telling you where to go and what your assignment is and what your job is, and so I have prior knowledge that I'm going to do stuff. I can afford, to a certain degree, to have a safety on, safety off. Obviously, you're also dealing with hundreds of thousands of humans that are probably 18 years of age. Some of them never held a handgun or a rifle, and that context is very different than the context that we talk about. So I still haven't answered your question. And I do want to talk about how safeties work, and that's the primary reason why I'm making this video. I'm kind of just merging the the two things. We're talking about this context. Let me bring up the video, and I understand I'm cherry picking a fucking video out. Like I get that, I understand that, and I get that. You go look it up on your own though. Go figure that shit out. Let me get this video up though, because this is the context that you might be dealing with. We have to be careful with this stuff. Always have to be careful with this stuff, right? Because I'm showing you one data point, and April is showing is probably coming from a place from her perspective, her world. All she knows is an environment where you don't have a round in the chamber, an environment where you have the safety on. And I promise you, there's probably going to be people in the comments that are going to say, well, I was a Marine, or I am a Marine, or I was in the Army, or whatever, and we always had one in the chamber, or whatever, right? Like it's she's coming from her perspective, and she's asking a question, and out of genuine curiosity, like it's I appreciate that she asked the question. But let me bring this up. um Here we go. So I have a gun, safety on, not one in the chamber, and then that happens. I understand a lot of humans who go to the range, and at the range are going to say, well, I could do it. If I was in that circumstance, I tried it at the range, and I timed myself, and I could draw the gun, chamber around, take the safety off, all in an instant at the range. Maybe, I haven't seen a video of you doing it, but also at the range, you didn't have somebody shooting at you. It wasn't a surprise. You choreographed it. You decided that you were going to drive to the range, so you anticipated what was going to happen. This human right here didn't know it was going to happen. Didn't choreograph it, didn't stage it, didn't plan it, didn't call the bad guys up, be like, hey, at 3 p.m. meet me at the fucking flagpole, because I want to get shot at, and then I'll be ready, and I'll draw my gun, and I'll rack the slide, and take the safety off all at the same time, and then I'll shoot you, and then I'll shoot the bad guy that comes with you. Like that's not what happens in real life. That's not what happens out in the wild. It's a big difference in context. Military stuff, training, when you're on base, when you're in combat, when you're whatever, it's context matters. So do I teach people to carry a handgun without a safety? First off, um boom, this is the gun that I carry, the Avidity Arms PD10. Where's the safety? How would I where do I keep where how do no safety? Um, the Smith and Wesson M&P 2.0. No safety, no safety. And yeah, I tell humans, keep one in the chamber. Keep one in the chamber. I think in 2025, 95% of humans out there have realized that having a safety on, if you have a striker fired firearm, at least, if you have the safety, if you have a gun with the safety, and if you carry without one in the chamber, it's a recipe for disaster. Why do we know this in 2025? Because we have the surveillance video to back it up. I'm not even showing you the handful of videos that we can go to as multiple data points of humans who had a gun with the safety on in a civilian environment, drew the gun, extended the gun out, pressed the trigger, and nothing happened because they had the safety on. Today's the 18th of September. Yesterday, the 17th of September, I had several people in my class with the safety. And one of the comments in our debrief at the end, he's like, I just found out today, after decades of carrying a gun with the safety, today is the first time that somebody encouraged me to use the safety in the class. Oh shit, look at that. I encouraged them to use the safety in the class because he had one. So if you come to my class and your gun has a safety, you better be running the safety. But at any rate, he says, I realized today, after decades of carrying a firearm with the safety, never doing formal training, that I don't want to carry a gun with the safety. He found out in that class, in the few hours that we had together, when that cognitive load kicks in and you're having to do things other than just choreograph your self-defense, when you're actually having to process information, you have very little bandwidth. There's an exercise we do where I'm asking humans to just take a ladder of motion on top of everything they've already learned, multiple target engagement and a few other things. And people struggle to do just that. So this human and the other humans as well were struggling to do the exercise, take the safety off, and shoot the bad guy, or the target in this case. And that's where he was coming from. He was coming from at the range when I'm all by myself bullshitting around. It's very easy for me to take the safety off, chamber around. But here I'm realizing that having a safety sucks ass in a more realistic environment. It's still the range. It was still the range. So why do we encourage people to have their safety on? I'm sorry, to not have a gun with the safety. If you have a gun with the safety, yeah, rock the fucking safety. Get a gun without a safety is what we encourage. So I never encourage people to have a safety and have the safety off. I encourage people who have a safety, use it, because your gun has a safety. So use it. Learn how to use it though. Almost every single human that comes to the classes, to the live fire classes, and has a safety, and I make them use a safety, at the end they realize why it sucks to have a safety. It's just not efficient. It's a pain in the ass. But we encourage people, buy a gun without a safety that doesn't need a safety, and keep one in the chamber. Absolutely. Absolutely. Here's why you can keep one in the chamber. This is really what the fucking video is about, is how do these safeties work? Here's another thing that April probably learned, and that's always treat the firearm as if it were loaded. So right now, the gun's not loaded, but according to the rules that the industry gives you, you should always treat this firearm as if it were loaded. So now I'm going to take it apart. For me, in this gun, I don't have to do the Glock thing, so I could just pull down on the takedown lever. And then now I'm almost ready to take it apart. Ah, fuck, I can't take it apart. You can argue that part of the internal safeties it was never really intended for that, but I would argue that in this particular gun and guns like the Glock and shit like that, this is part of the safeties. But anyways, I can't take it apart. You can't take it apart because I need to do one more thing, and that one more thing is press the trigger. So now I'm faced with the dilemma. Do I press the trigger to take the gun apart, or do I treat it as if it were loaded? Because if I were to treat it as if it were loaded, guess what I shouldn't be doing? Shouldn't be pressing that trigger right now because there's no bad guy. There's no any of that stuff. And people right now are going to be like, well, it's pointed in a generally safe direction. No, 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 no. You said always assume the firearm is loaded. This is always. So that's why following rules that you can't follow is super silly. If you've been in our classes before, you know the rules that we follow. So anyways, now I can press the trigger because I'm an adult and we verified that this gun was unloaded. And I'm not going to treat that gun as if it were loaded because I need to take it apart because context matters. Context matters. So at any rate, let's talk about why you can carry a gun with a round in the chamber, why you shouldn't worry about this. So the way these guns work is they have multiple internal passive safeties. So in here, we have one continuous trigger bar. Hopefully you guys can see it relatively okay. That is one continuous trigger bar. So I can move it. One continuous trigger bar. Now in that trigger bar, one little thing that you might be able to notice is that little tab that's right there. That tab, boom. When you press the trigger, there's something towards the rear that pushes that trigger bar down, and this comes up. It elevates. What that is pressing on this slide is that big old fucking button that you see right there. It's pressing that. Boom. What is that button? That is a safety plunger. That is a firing pin safety. If you notice my firing pin, let me see if I cannot push it down any further. That's about as down as it can go until something pushes this. And then when that something pushes that, then it can go all the way down to the bottom. This is tough trying to do it like that. So now when that gets pushed, the firing pin, I think you can see it, boom, can come out. Look at that. Boom. But if I don't have anything pushing that, the firing pin does not protrude. I'm Mexican, so fucking you know what's up. Does not come out. Once I hit that little button, make sure I hit the button. That firing pin can come out. Look at that shit. So that's one of the internal safeties. That's one of the internal safeties. Another internal safety is towards the back. There's a disconnector. I'm not gonna take it completely apart, but there's a disconnector, and that's what I was talking about earlier. The disconnector that when you press the trigger all the way to the rear, it pushes down on the trigger bar, and then that causes the trigger bar to pivot, thus releasing the firing pin after it has pressed it all the way to the rear, and then this going up, and then pushing the safety plunger that's right there, allowing space for the firing pin to move forward. In this particular gun and in the Glocks and in some similar styles, I would argue that the firing pin, let me see, the firing pin being blocked by this little tab right there, this right here curls. Hopefully you guys can see it. It kind of curls right there. And this is what is pulling back on the firing pin. That pulls back on the firing pin. That is actually blocking the firing pin from moving forward until you press the trigger to the rear, which is why in many of these striker fired firearms, you have to press the trigger to release the slide, because that's in the way. It will not allow the firing pin to move forward until you press the trigger to the rear. And then that goes down. In this particular time, it went back, but it also went down, allowing the firing pin to move forward. It goes back because it's actually pulling back on the firing pin, because this firing pin right now is under very little spring compression, so very little potential energy. What needs to happen is the firing pin needs to pull it back and then releases. So I would argue that by itself is a safety. Is this is not compressed. They don't treat it as such. Nobody in the gun industry says that that's a safety. I would argue that it is an additional, even if it's just a byproduct, even if it just as a consequence, an additional safety. And then we have the tab safety, the famous tab safety. I'll show you this one on the Canik, because this one's red. That's a drop safety. So the gun hits, boom, the gun drops and it hits. It will not allow the trigger from moving forward. If that tab would not be there, it is very likely that this gun hits with enough force, with enough inertia, that this would continue traveling. But some genius a long time ago was like, let's add a little tab there. That way, if the gun falls, boom, it doesn't continue traveling. It is also can be a snag safety. That's not what it was intended for. It's a drop safety. So there's a lot of reasons why you can have a gun in the around in the chamber and not have to worry about it. This gun, unless you press the trigger, boom, unless you press the trigger, it's not going to go off. Now, some of you guys are going to be like, well, what about the SIG P320? We've got a video. I'll probably tag it down below or whatever. We got a video where we talk about with the maker of this gun, Rob Pincus, and we kind of run through the problem with people and the SIG P320. Separate video. Now, I do want to talk about other internal safeties with striker-fired firearms because this one works a little bit differently. But still internal safeties. This one is the Canics. This one's the Canik, the Prime, rocking that Gideon optic. This is the Meta MC9 Prime. These guns right here operate under a pre-cocked or a skimmer type situation. If you notice something sticking out, when you press the trigger, that releases. So that works. It works a little bit different than the firearm that I just had right here. So I want to talk about these internal safeties. Not super different, but a little bit different. Let me show you the Canik that's already taken apart. The Canik that's already taken apart is this one. Oh no, wrong slide. Boom. This one is the Meta SFT. That's the one that I've got right here. This is still has that firing pin block, so that firing pin safety. The safety plunger, it's still there. The biggest difference is that when you rack the slide back, the firing pin tab or this part of the firing pin catches on that little hook that's right there. This one, let me get this on this little hook that's right there. This one, it latches on that little hook that's right there. Boom, and it stays back. And then when you press the trigger, this one's the one I'm worried about, whether or not you'll be able to see. When you press the trigger, you see how that trigger bar is moving back, but down at the bottom, there's another tab that pushes. You see the movement. Well, what that's moving is actually because there's pressure on this. There's pressure on this right here from the slide. Wrong way. I keep going the same direction. There's pressure on it. Let me see if I could do it with my finger. Yeah, with my finger. There's pressure there, and then when you push that, it falls down. You hear that? But it will not do that until the trigger moves to the rear. It pushes on the base, or it's got it's like a little table holding it up, I guess, if you will. And then once that pushes it, the trigger bar pushes it. It makes contact there. You see that gray thing? Makes contact with it, and then it pushes it out of the way, and then that gets to go all the way down. Before that, this doesn't go all the way down. There's something there, so it doesn't go all the way down, and then that hits it, and then goes all the way down, releasing it from that little hook that's right there. This little hook that's right there. So yes, it's pre-cocked. The firing pin is pre-cocked, but it will not release until you press the trigger all the way to the rear. Let me show you another one. This one is the Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0. It works a little bit different. It's kind of pre-cocked as well. Where'd I put this? This one, it has an interesting little mechanism in here. For those of you guys that are relatively new to guns, I don't think you could see it. But this one, Smith & Wesson decided that they're going to add a little pin in here. That way you don't have to press the trigger. Oh, you can see it now. It's that little lever that's right there. Let me move it out of the way and then see how you can't see it there. And then I'm going to move that shit out of the way. Pew. Trying to do this in videos. So awkward. Now you see like a little additional thing that's right there. Boom, that thing in the middle. I'll show you what it did in just a tad bit. So now I'm going to take this gun apart, and I don't have to, in theory, oh, did it move out of the way? Yeah, it moved out of the way. Oh, I broke it. I broke it. All right, I'm gonna have to press the trigger. So I just moved it a little bit too rough, and now it's broken. There we go. So basically, what ends up happening is when you press the trigger, it's pre-cocked. So again, slide on the Smith and Wesson M&P. I still have the firing pin safety. That's right, not that one, but that one right there. The firing pin safety, the safety plunger. I still have it. It's in a different location, but it's still there. When you rack the slide, it stays back. It's pre-cocked. That firing pin latches on this right here. Latches on that. When you press the trigger, it pushes it down. You see how it pushes it down, allowing the firing pin to move forward. This gun will not go off until you press the trigger, and that pushes it. Before then, there's no real way for you to try and push it down. There's absolutely no way until something is releasing it. There's a spring that's down here. There's a spring that's down here. And until I press the trigger, it will not allow me to push that shit down. So the problem that I had earlier before, when I broke the thing, I pushed this shit too far down and it came out of it basically disengaged. But that little lever, when you push it, it shifts. That way, when it shifts, it moves it out of the way, allowing the slide to go forward. So unless you've got something pushing it, and there's that little lever right here that it makes contact with, and you push it, and then it releases it. Until something pushes it down, it's not going to release on its own. The only way that happens when the gun's together is when you press the trigger. So that one works a little bit differently. That one doesn't work as complex. It's not as involved, I guess. That one is basically you just I just found a better angle, maybe. Right there. Yep. You see how it makes contact and then it pushes it back. Now, again, underneath there, you've got a spring. So you'd have the firing pin hitting it, and then you'd have the spring, and then it can go forward. So I got my nail there. It's stuck. It can't go anywhere until you press the trigger, and then it goes forward. I don't know if that fucking helped. But at any rate, these guns, unless you're pressing the trigger, the safety plungers are not being engaged or disengaged, depending on how you look at it, and the firing pin can't move forward. And then you've got some sort of block that's blocking the firing pin. So two blocks essentially. And then until you press the trigger to the rear, you won't disengage both of those. Now, some of them, once you start pressing the trigger, you're disengaging one or the other on some of these guns. And that's one of the things you kind of have to be aware. So like this one, you won't. This one, it's to the rear a little bit. Now, we don't encourage staging of the trigger, but it's to the rear a little bit, and that won't make contact until you actually start going more towards the rear. So if I stage this trigger a little bit, it's not making contact with it. But there's some guns like the SIG P320 where you start to move the trigger, staging the trigger, and it's already starting to disengage some of the safeties. So this is where a lot of people are like, well, it's not safe, or they had seen an accident. And a lot of it has to do with that people were already pressing the trigger and something else happened that allowed the gun to go pew. You have to understand this staging of the trigger is moving the trigger. It's pressing the trigger. The The tab safety on this gun is more of a cut. They cut it in the center, and then it will not go off until that happens. This one's a little weird because if you hit the trigger too high, that can happen. So you have to make sure you hit a little bit lower. So it's been a concern. I think Smith and Wesson fixed it with some of the guns, but that is an additional, again, that drop safe. So I've said probably a lot more words than I wanted to say, but that's kind of a little bit about how these safeties work. These are striker fired firearms. I haven't gone through every single system that's out there. I've got some guns that maybe work a little bit different, but the concept is there. Hammered guns operate a little bit differently. So I might make a video about that in the future. But right now I wanted to focus on the striker fired firearms. Why on the striker fired firearms? Because most humans carry striker fired firearms in 2025. Very few humans carry hammered guns. That's old technology. I can make a video on why we don't recommend hammered guns for self-defense in a different video. A lot of you guys are super passionate about them and all that shit. I wanted to make a video about why not hammered guns in 2025, but I wanted to be quasi-scientific, not just Edgar saying reasons. With this one's easy. We have plenty of evidence, aside from millions upon millions of humans carrying loaded handguns without safeties, without any issues. Aside from that, we have plenty of video evidence why guns with safeties and unchambered are not the way to go. If you have a gun with the safety, use it. Your gun came with the safety. It's there for a reason. Use it. Our advice would be carry a gun without a safety and one in the chamber. I showed you just one video from a self-defense perspective why you should do that. And we talked about why your gun has enough internal safeties and why you wouldn't need an external manual safety, mechanical safety, manual safety, I'm sorry, a thumb safety and shit like that. I should have passive safeties. These guns have passive safeties. Passive meaning that I hold the gun and press the trigger the exact same way, and that's where the safeties are at. There's a tab safety there. Boom, I press the trigger. When I press the trigger, it disengages the safeties that are internal. So I don't need additional manual safeties, an additional step between me and the bad guy. So I hope this shit made sense. The way my brain works is once I start talking and it's thinking about other shit, like literally my brain's fucking somewhere else. And sometimes I'm even talking and I'm not even with you anymore. I'm fucking somewhere else. And then I come to it and I was like, I don't even know what the fuck I was talking about anymore. This is why me following a script is very difficult for me, because you would think that it actually keeps me on track, but it doesn't, because I start reading that shit and then my brain goes somewhere else because like I'm not fucking interested in this shit. And then it comes back and I don't know what the fuck I'm reading, where I'm reading and shit like that. This is why I just fucking send it. I know it's frustrating for a lot of you guys, but this is how my fucking brain works. I've tried to organize it before, and there's plenty of times I'm fucking asleep halfway in the fucking video while I'm talking. And I come to and I'm like, I don't fucking know what the fuck I'm talking about, if it even made sense. So hopefully it fucking made sense. Understand the differences between how your safeties work, how your mechanisms work. Understanding the way the gun works is a big way for you to understand why you don't need safeties and how they actually work. The passive safeties, the ones that you do have in your firearm. I hope that helped. I hope that answered the question for April. I hope that answered the question for a lot of you guys that don't know how the internal safeties work. Stay tuned for a more involved video about the differences between hammered guns and striker fired firearms and why we recommend one more than the other ones. And then the evidence, the evidence. We can't just talk shit about something. We have to provide the evidence. Question. You told me about, well, no, last video I asked you guys to do this shit and you fucking didn't do it. So hopefully you put in the comments recent past, some fun, exciting shit that you've done. Now I'm looking at future. In the future, what awesome plans, what exciting shit do you have for the future? I want to hear about that shit. Post it down below. Talk about it in the comments. It doesn't have to be gun related, just exciting shit that happened to you in the past, recent past, and then exciting shit that you look forward to, that you plan on doing, that you're working on, projects that you're working on, shit like that. So do that. This video is a lot longer than I thought it was gonna fucking be. Holy fuck.